worst mistake I've ever made took less than 3 seconds. 3 seconds. That's all it took for a complete stranger to learn exactly where I lived. And to this day, I still check my peephole before I go to sleep. This happened when I was 23. I had just moved into my first apartment after college. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was cheap. And honestly, I was just happy to finally have my own place. The building only had 8 units. Most of the tenants kept to themselves. I barely knew anyone there. One night around 10 o'clock, somebody knocked on my door. At first, I ignored it. I wasn't expecting anybody. The knocking came again. 3 slow knocks. Not aggressive, just persistent. I looked through the peephole. A young woman was standing outside. She looked terrified. She kept glancing over her shoulder toward the parking lot. When I opened the door a crack, she immediately started talking. She said her phone had died and that somebody had been following her. She asked if she could come inside and charge her phone for a few minutes. I felt bad for her. She looked genuinely scared, and honestly, she seemed normal. Maybe 20 years old, sweatshirt, jeans, no obvious red flags, so I let her in. That decision still bothers me. She stayed for maybe 15 minutes. The entire time she seemed nervous, constantly checking the windows, looking toward the front door. I offered to call the police for her. She immediately refused. That should have been a warning sign. Eventually she thanked me and left. I locked the door behind her and forgot about the whole thing. Or at least I tried to. The next night somebody knocked again. Same time, same 3 knocks. I looked through the peephole. Nobody. The hallway was empty. I opened the door. Nothing. I checked both ends of the hallway. Still nothing. I figured somebody was messing around and went back inside. The following night it happened again. 3 knocks. No one there. Then it happened the next night, and the next. By the end of the week, I was getting very nervous. Every night, exactly the same. 3 knocks, and nobody outside. Who is doing it? How is it keep happening? I started staying awake waiting for it. One night I decided to react immediately. The second I heard the knocks, I yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. But this time, I noticed something. The stairwell door at the end of the hall was slowly swinging shut, like somebody had just run through it. I sprinted down the hallway, opened the stairwell door. Nobody, just empty stairs. I went back to my apartment feeling more unsettled than ever. And that's when I noticed something on my doormat, a folded piece of paper. I hadn't seen it before. Written on it were 4 words. You shouldn't open doors. My stomach dropped. I checked every camera angle available in the building. Nothing. Nobody ever appeared. No visitors, no suspicious activity, nothing. I even showed the note to the landlord. He thought it was a prank. I wanted to believe that. Then things got worse. A few days later, I came home from work and found my apartment exactly the way I'd left it. Almost. One thing was different. A chair from my kitchen had been moved into my bedroom. I knew I hadn't left it there. I was absolutely certain. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe I'd moved it and forgotten. Then it happened again. A picture frame moved, a lamp facing a different direction. Tiny things nobody else would notice. But I noticed, because I lived alone. Eventually, I bought a small security camera and pointed it at my front door. The first 2 nights, nothing happened. On the 3rd night, I got an alert on my phone, motion detected. The timestamp was 3:14 in the morning. I opened the footage and immediately felt sick, like a chill went through my spine. The woman, the same woman, I'd let into my apartment. She was standing outside my door, just staring into the camera, not knocking, not moving, just standing there, for almost 20 minutes. Then, she slowly smiled and walked away. The next morning I went directly to the police. I showed them the footage. They took a report, but they couldn't identify her. And here's the part that still keeps me awake. A few days later, an officer called me. He asked if I'd ever given that woman access to my apartment. I said no, of course not. Then he asked me another question, one that made my blood run cold. He asked if she'd ever been inside long enough to be left alone. I remembered something immediately. The night she first came over, I'd gone downstairs to grab a package from the lobby. I'd left her alone in my apartment for maybe 3 minutes. The officer was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's more than enough time." I moved out less than 2 weeks later. I never saw the woman again. But before I left, I found something taped underneath my kitchen table. A A small key, one that definitely didn't belong to me, and I've spent years wondering the same thing. If that key wasn't mine, what exactly did it open? 5 years ago, my neighbor's daughter disappeared. One day she was there. The next day she wasn't. No note, no phone call, no witnesses, just gone. The entire town searched for weeks. Volunteers searched through forests. Search dogs were brought in. Missing person posters covered every telephone pole for miles. Nothing ever turned up. Nobody, no evidence, no answers. The case slowly faded from the news, but it never faded from the neighborhood, especially not for my neighbor, Richard. I had lived beside Richard for almost 10 years. Before his daughter vanished, he was the kind of guy who talked to everyone, always outside, always smiling. Afterward, he changed. He became quieter, thinner, almost paranoid. His wife barely left the house anymore. Whenever people mentioned their daughter, both of them would immediately change the subject. Honestly, I couldn't blame them. Losing a child like that would destroy anybody. At least, that's what I used to think. A few days ago, something happened that completely changed how I used to see them. It started when Richard knocked on my front door. He asked if he could borrow my shovel. Nothing unusual about that, he said. He was doing some landscaping work in the backyard. I handed it over without thinking twice. A few minutes later, I happened to walk upstairs to my home office. From that room, I have a clear view of his backyard. That's when I noticed something strange. Richard wasn't landscaping. He was digging a massive hole. Not a flower bed, not a trench, a deep hole. The kind of hole you'd dig if you planned on putting something large inside it. He looked exhausted, sweat soaked through his shirt, yet he kept digging, for nearly an hour. Eventually, I felt bad watching him struggle. I grabbed another shovel and walked over to help. The second I stepped into his yard and called his name, he panicked. Not surprised, panicked. He dropped my shovel and rushed toward me. His face had gone completely pale. "No, go home." Those were the first words out of his mouth. I laughed and told him I was just trying to help. He stepped directly between me and the hole. Then he said something that still bothers me. "I don't want anyone near this ground." Not the hole, not the backyard, the ground. I remember staring at him, waiting for him to explain. He never did. Instead, he pointed toward the gate and told me to leave. So I did. But from that moment on, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that afternoon, I checked my window again. The hole was finished. Richard wasn't digging anymore. He was just standing there, looking around, checking neighboring houses, watching windows, making sure nobody was watching him. Then his eyes suddenly locked onto mine. I immediately stepped away from the window, but it was too late. He'd seen me. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I heard it. The sound of metal striking dirt. Slow, rhythmic. Dig, pause, dig, pause. I walked upstairs and looked outside. Richard was back, and he was digging again, this time in complete darkness. The only light came from a small lantern beside him. I watched for several minutes, then he suddenly stopped. He looked toward his house and walked inside. That's when I made the worst decision of my life. I climbed over my fence, crossed into his backyard, and approached the hole. The closer I got, the worse I felt. I can't explain it. It was like every instinct in my body was telling me to turn around, but I kept going. When I reached the edge, I looked inside. At first, I couldn't see much. Then the moonlight shifted, and I noticed something sticking out of the dirt. Black plastic, partially buried. The corner of a large garbage bag. My heart started pounding. I don't know why. I just knew I didn't want to find out what was inside. I backed away immediately, and thank God I did, because seconds later, the back door opened. Richard stepped outside. Only this time he wasn't carrying a shovel. He was carrying a flashlight, and he wasn't heading toward the hole. He was walking directly toward the spot where I'd been standing. I ran. I jumped the fence, got inside my house, locked every door, and spent the rest of the night staring at my bedroom ceiling. The next morning the hole was gone, completely filled in, like it had never existed. But something else caught my attention. Richard's truck was missing. The driveway was empty. It didn't return until late that evening. I still don't know what was buried in that hole. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe there's a perfectly innocent explanation. But there's one thing I can't stop thinking about. Richard never returned my shovel. And ever since that night, he's been watching me, not constantly, just enough. A glimpse through a curtain, a silhouette behind a window, a figure standing motionless in his yard when he thinks I'm not looking. Then yesterday, I caught him staring directly into my home from an upstairs window. The moment our eyes met, he slowly closed the blinds, not slammed them, not hurried, slowly, like he wanted me to know he'd seen me. And honestly, I think he knows I saw the hole. I think he knows I went into his backyard. And lately, I'm starting to wonder if whatever was buried there was never the thing I should have been afraid of. Or something I should be. The last time I ever saw him, he was standing in his bedroom window, completely motionless, just staring at my house. And even now, years later, I still wonder what would have happened if my family hadn't moved away when we did. When I was 15, my family lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone mostly kept to themselves. Our next-door neighbors were no exception. There were two brothers who lived there with their father. For privacy, I'll call them Ryan and Blake. Despite living beside them for nearly 10 years, I could count on one hand how many conversations we'd had. They were strange kids. Not the awkward kind, the kind that made you uncomfortable without saying anything. Ryan was around my age. Blake was maybe a year older. Neither of them seemed interested in having friends. So when Ryan randomly approached me and my younger brother while we were shooting hoops in our driveway, it immediately felt unusual. The first thing he asked was whether it was true that we were moving. I told him yes. My dad had accepted a job in another state and we'd be leaving in a couple months. For some reason, Ryan seemed disappointed, almost upset. But by the end of the conversation, he invited us to hang out the next day. He said they were going target shooting in the woods behind the old railroad tracks and asked if we wanted to come. My younger brother got excited immediately. I figured it couldn't hurt. Besides, we'd never really given those guys a chance. Looking back, that was probably my first mistake. The next afternoon, they showed up at our house carrying a large duffel bag. Both of them were dressed almost identically. Dark clothes, hunting boots, backpacks. The whole thing felt weirdly serious. As we walked toward the woods, neither of them spoke much. The conversation kept dying after a few words. Every now and then I'd catch my little brother looking at me with the same confused expression I was feeling. Eventually, we reached a clearing near a creek. Ryan dropped the duffel bag onto the ground. Blake immediately started kicking rocks into the water. Neither of them seemed normal. Not nervous, not shy, just off. Then Ryan unzipped the bag, and my stomach dropped. Inside weren't airsoft guns. They weren't BB guns. They were actual firearms, several of them. My little brother reached toward one before I stopped him. I remember asking Ryan if those guns were real. He looked genuinely confused by the question, like he couldn't understand why I was asking. Then Blake picked one up and fired it into the trees. The sound echoed through the woods. That was enough for me. I grabbed my brother and told them we were leaving. Neither of them tried stopping us, but both of them watched us walk away. Neither smiled, neither waved, they just stared. The entire walk home, I had this horrible feeling that we'd made them angry. That night at dinner, we told our parents those boys were weird. We left out the gun part. Honestly, I was afraid we'd get in trouble for going with them. I wish I had told them everything, because what happened later still gives me chills. Sometime after midnight, I woke up freezing. A cold breeze was blowing directly onto my face. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I realized my bedroom window was open, wide open. I sat up, and that's when I heard breathing behind me. Slow, calm, close. A voice whispered directly into my ear, "Don't scream." Every muscle in my body locked up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I recognized the voice instantly. Ryan. He was standing inside my room. I never heard him enter, never heard the window open. Nothing. He told me that if I ever told anyone about the guns, especially his father, he would come back, and next time, he wouldn't come alone. I remember nodding because I couldn't force words out. Then he stepped backward toward the window. Before climbing out, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "We'll know if you tell." Then he disappeared into the darkness. I didn't sleep at all that night, and I didn't tell anybody. For the next several weeks, things got worse. Every few nights, I'd catch one of them staring from a window in their house. Sometimes Ryan, sometimes Blake, sometimes both, always watching, always motionless, Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see a silhouette standing across the street, looking directly at our house. The closer we got to moving day, the stranger they became. Then came the night that convinced me those two were dangerous. Around 1 a.m, something slammed against my bedroom window. The sound jolted me awake. I looked outside and immediately hit the floor. Someone was standing in our front yard, holding what looked like a handgun, pointed directly at my bedroom. I genuinely thought I was about to die. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Then laughter erupted from outside. 2 voices, Ryan and Blake. I peeked back up just enough to see them walking away, still laughing, like the whole thing had been a joke. A few days later, somebody scratched profanity into our mailbox. My brother found dead birds placed beside his bicycle twice. Nobody could prove it was them, but we knew. Deep down we knew. Thankfully, we moved away less than a week later, and that should have been the end of it. But years afterward, my younger brother admitted something he'd never told me. The night before we moved, he looked out his bedroom window. Both brothers were standing in their front yard, staring at our house, not talking, not moving, just watching, as if they were waiting for something. I've never seen either of them again, and honestly, I hope I never do.